I just tweeted it. You can.
You're at the left.
Oh wait, I'll share it on their
I
other
think there it
Twitter
is.
too.
Can I see me on the screen? Oh yeah, it's reversed. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Yay,
you're on the
all
screen.
right, so I'm gonna get started. My name is Curtis Holzapfel. I am the owner of Open Function Computers. We are a tiny little contract company here in Portland, Oregon. We do stuff for small, medium-sized businesses mostly. Pretty much, someone says something needs to work, and we say, cool, let's make it work. We do some IT stuff, but for the most part, we do a lot of programming. A lot of it just ends up being web central. So, of course, PHP is one of the languages that we use quite frequently. This is me. You can see me right here. I tweet at both of these because I'm really bad at my own marketing, and I will sometimes not realize that I'm tweeting as the business. Sometimes that's on my own account. But GitHub, we're on there too. We do a lot of stuff on Bitbucket, so if it looks like we're not that active on GitHub, that's why. Yeah, we're all over the place. Anyway, let's go to the terminal and get this party started. So I got a couple of windows open. Can everyone see this? I can zoom in more if needed. Just shout if we need to. I got some notes. We're going to ignore when I'm scrolling through this. It's for my own benefit. Okay, so let's just talk about Laravel in general. First, I got this window open. All I've done is run Composer Create Project. So this is a brand new Laravel install. Absolutely nothing has happened to it except for the Composer command, because sometimes it takes longer than I want it to. And I wanted to get party started as quick as possible. So you can see we just ran Composer Create Project. This is all on the Laravel docs on how to get it installed and everything. And it did all that fun stuff with Composer, set up all of the stuff with all that stuff, found these packages, and we're done. We're good to go, right? So here's Laravel. And over here on the sidebar, this is what a Laravel project looks like. I'm not going to get too in-depth with Laravel. If you've never touched it before, you might want to do a little bit of homework, but this thing's pretty great. And out of the box, you see this lovely little tests folder. So Laravel wants you to write tests. It's just there. It's set up. It's ready to go. You don't need to do too much to make the magic happen with TDD and Laravel. If you look inside that folder, there's two different files right here. We got this test case PHP, and this thing just extends this base class from Laravel, and it's ready to go with PHP Unit. PHP Unit is a unit testing framework, but we can do more than just unit tests with it because of how Laravel bootstraps your application to work with PHP Unit. It uses this trait, and that's it. It's not a lot going on in here. This trait just basically takes your application, bootstraps it, makes the magic happen. Cool. So then we have these feature and unit folders. And these two just contain a single file. Both of them, example tests. Let's start with the unit test one. And it literally just extends that test case and says, hey, can we assert that true is true? And it should work. I mean, you want to make sure that true is true. Cool. The feature test is a little bit cooler. It actually bootstraps the application. And then you can see that we can say a response is equal to going and getting the home page, and we want to assert that we got 200 status code. So already we're doing something kind of cool here because it's bootstrapping an entire application, and you can make HTTP requests on it. So out of the box, it's got quite a bit of stuff already done for you. And if we wanted to, here's where I balanced the microphone, we can actually run PHP Unit. All right, so let's just run /vendor. I'm in the wrong folder. /vendor bin PHP unit, and it runs. And cool, 2 tests, 2 assertions. Everything looks good to go. These things, we could sanity check and just make sure that false is not equal true. And hey, look at that, 1 did not pass. Awesome. So before I get too much further, I did put a couple of slides together. And, will that help? Okay, that's cool. Thank you. All right. Now I can hold it while I do the slides because the slides are easy. All right. So if anyone's ever, if you've never written any tests before, the verbiage can get kind of intense. Like there's all sorts of names of what you're supposed to be doing, and there's a whole bunch of shame if you do things wrong, and there's a whole bunch of if you're not doing this correctly in isolation, then it's not worth the while, and all this jargon. So it's just overwhelming and it can get intense. But it doesn't have to be. Let's just talk about some of these terms real quick so that we can use the same terminology, but it's not like intense, right? So unit testing. All of your applications are composed of all these little pieces, right? All these little things that do something. And if you can isolate those things, then you can test them to make sure that they do what they're supposed to do. So a unit of your software, you can test it with unit tests. Feature and integration testing. Now you have a bunch of those units, right? And you want to make sure that they work together. So you have a puzzle, and each puzzle piece, it does its job. And when you put them together, they do a bigger job together. And then acceptance testing or system testing. The lines just keep getting blurrier and blurrier here. The further along you go, and it basically means like let's take the entire thing and let's test it in like an end-to-end test. You might have heard that too. That's just like, make sure that the thing does what it's supposed to do. So it's not just this little tiny bit, and it's not like a grouping of bits, it's the whole thing, right? You have this whole thing. So here's my terrible illustration. I drew a car, right? So if we wanted to test this car, maybe we have some unit tests. And here's like the different things that you could write unit tests for, right? Like the window or the windshield, maybe this glass could be tinted, and you wanted to test how much light could come through it. So that if you were way too opaque, it's like, okay, cool, we don't want to do that, right? Tail lights, there's like a single thing that has 2 light bulbs in there, and you can control them individually, right? Like that's a thing that you can test. It's got 2 light bulbs and they come on and off when the signals are received. The tires, right? They have a max fill PSI. The brakes, they slow the car down and they release what I don't know. I don't know cars, so this is maybe a bad example. Feature tests, right? So a turn signal. You've got the little switch next to the steering wheel, and you've got the lights on the outside. So you've got 2 different units, and when you click the switch, the light blinks, right? You want to test those 2 things are working together. So that's a feature test. Same here with the ignition. When you turn the starter with the key, or if you've got a fancy car and you just hit the button. I've seen that. I don't have one of those cars. Then the engine starts, right? Same thing. You got 2 parts, 2 or more parts. You're just tying them together and making the magic happen. And then you got like an acceptance test, right? So here we're on a crash test dummy. We actually got all the way through all of our R&D, and we now have a car, and our bosses are like, sweet, go put one in a factory and drive it into a wall to make sure that it doesn't kill the crash test dummies, right? Acceptance testing. We're now doing the whole thing. Here's another example. Driving down the highway, it doesn't blow up. I did a little bit of research, like I said, I don't know cars, and I learned that the Pintos used to blow up because if they got rear-ended, the gas tank would leak and then sparks and then fire and bad. And maybe they should have had an acceptance test for getting rear-ended. Okay. And so then you see this testing pyramid in a lot of the talks and stuff that's out there. And this is a great starting point to kind of like conceptualize how you want to structure your test suite. And you might even have multiple test suites. And they all can comprise of different tests that you can run. Some of them are going to run much faster than others. If you look down here at the unit level, these are all tested in isolation, right? Like testing to make sure that your stop light or your car tail light can blink is way easier than testing that the airbag's deployed when you smash a car into the wall. So the more unit tests you have, the more you can be confident, and you don't need as many feature tests. Don't take my words and say like I don't need any feature tests. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you have a whole bunch of pieces that work, then you can test that they work together. And then eventually you have a couple of really crucial things that you maybe want to do a full end-to-end test. So you get up here, and those are way slower to run. Maybe you're like scripting the browser to actually bootstrap the app, go to the page, type in the box, click the thing, and all of those tests take way longer to write and take way longer to run than just a simple unit test. Okay, so in a nutshell, unit tests, individual parts, feature tests, put those parts together, acceptance tests, end-to-end tests, like big heavy things. Maybe you want to put the application under super heavy load and see what happens when it's like barely holding on, right? You can degrade gracefully or something like that. That's all the kind of stuff that you could do for that testing. So out of the box, Laravel gives us unit and feature tests super simply. And that is what we see in this test structure. And these 2 example tests, we already looked at them. They don't really do anything, so let's just get rid of them. Let's just completely destroy them. trash, run PHP unit. Okay, cool. Where there's no tests, right? And just so you know, I have a couple of aliases. I type PT, it's the exact same thing. It's typing vendor bin PHP unit. So if you see me type that, that's what that was. It's just me doing things quickly on my keyboard. Okay, so we have Laravel ready, we have PHP unit ready. It does all this magic for us. What are we building, right? I don't know about you guys, but a lot of times in the contract world, we are handed some project, and it's like, hey, go make this happen. And we go, cool, what's the specs on it, right? Like, do we have a technical spec doc? And they look at me like, what are you talking about? We just need you to go do this thing. And we go, okay, well, what should it look like? Do we have mock-ups? Do we have wireframes? Do we have a content doc? And they're like, just go, you're asking too many questions. We need you to go get to work already. So we're like, okay, cool. So most of the time as developers, we want to just start coding. And I want to encourage you all to not start coding at that point. Take some time to think about it, write something down, talk to the people who are going to sign off on the thing. And if that just turns into like a quick bullet list of like, this is what it needs to do, get someone to look at that and say, yes, that is accurate. Because it's going to get their head spinning ahead of time too. And it's just going to make everything way better if you are actually working towards a goal instead of just working. So let's imagine a weird scenario where this company that we're working for is like, hey, we got this new cool product coming out and we need to gather like people's information who want the product. So it's like, okay, how do you want to do that? They're like, well, let's just put up a lead generation form. It's like, okay, cool. Well, what do we need? And they're like, okay, blah, 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 right? So you talk to a bunch of people and you eventually end up putting this little tiny thing together. And I'll zoom in on that. And somebody signed off on this. This is everything that we need to build, right? So we need to make a new lead capture form that users sign up for an upcoming promotion. It needs to capture their first, last names, email address, and optionally their phone number. We got them to say optionally on one thing, so that's awesome. We've already gotten like some validation that we need to do. When the lead is captured, what do we want to do with it? Cool, we want to send that info in an email to this random thing. And we also want to be able to see all of the submissions that happen on a single page. So cool, okay, we can make that happen. And when a submission is received, the user should see the message on the page. Thank you so much, someone will reach out to you soon. Cool, so we have a little bit of approved content. We have some instructional information. We at least have a direction to build towards, right? We took that silly stuff and we said, you don't have any designs approved, so we're gonna make it look like this. Is this an approved design? And some boss out there said yes, and I'm amazed because it's really ugly, but this is my design skills. We're not here to talk about my design skills. All right, so we have a direction to head to, right? And that gives us basically we can kick off this whole project now. So let's go take a look and see what we can do with Laravel out of the box. I'm gonna drag this up a little bit to give us a bit more terminal. I'm gonna do this cool cup microphone stand thing. Yeah, all right. So Laravel gives us this PHP artisan, this command that kind of gives us our entry point to the entire ecosystem of the framework. So if you just run artisan, you can see everything that you can do from this command. And I'm going to make some new things, like a test, create a new test class. So what are we building? Well, we're building a form. So let's go ahead and do PHP artisan make test form test. And test created successfully. You'll see that that dropped it right there into the feature folder. And if we look at it, here we go. It's the exact same thing as we had at the beginning of the Laravel install. So we already know that this thing works. Let's just get rid of it and write our own tests. So if I save this and we run the tests again, cool. No test class found in this thing. So there's nothing in here, right? It's just an empty thing. So let's go ahead and make our first test. And what do we want to test? We want to test that when someone goes to the home page, they see the text that we want them to, right? Okay, so let's just test that. When a person goes to the home page, they see the correct text. And I'm going to make that. There we go. Okay, and then let's do the thing. So let's say, so when I say do the thing, sorry, let me back up. When you're doing testing, you should think in 3 steps, the 3 A's of testing. Number 1, assemble. get all your parts together. Number 2, act. Do something to those parts. And number 3, assert. Assert that what you wanted to have happen, happened. It's that simple. You don't have to do too much. You just get your stuff, do something to the stuff, check the stuff did what you wanted it to do. That's it. So let's go ahead and do our number 1, assemble. Well, like I said, Laravel gives us the application bootstrapped out of the box, so we don't really need to assemble anything. All we need to do now is act. So what do we want to act on? Well, we can say response is equal to this, get the home page, and now what do we want to assert? I don't mind that first assertion that we had, response assert C, oh, not C, assert status. And yeah, we want a 200 status code. That's no harm. Let's leave that there. But now let's also make sure that we see the text that we want. Assert C. And now this does not come, neither of these assertions come with PHP unit out of the box. This is Laravel giving us some awesome stuff that we can use to make sure that the text and everything that we want on the page is there. So we want to see the text. Please give us your information, right? And let's take a quick peek at the mockup. We also want to see first name, last name, email address, phone number. Cool. So let's just go ahead and give ourselves a couple more assertions. First name, last name, email, primary email address. I'm not going to do this the whole time, I promise. And phone number. All right. So now we have a test. 100% chance that this test will not pass. This test was written as a target for us to get to, right? So here we have all of these assertions. We expect this one will probably work because that one's set up out of the box, but this is definitely not going to work. So let's just run that test. Cool. All right. What did we get? We got 1 failure. Failed asserting that all of this HTML that Laravel generated, all of this stuff, this whole thing contains that text. So already we don't have we have the assertion in place that we're aiming towards, right? Like we have the goal. So let's go ahead and go make this true. This is test-driven development, right? The tests are driving us to our goal. I'm going to go to we know that we're going to the home page. So if we go to the routes folder, this is how Laravel works with routing. Inside this web file, you can see that this is how they declare a get method on the home page. They're going to return this view welcome. That welcome view lives inside of resources, views, welcome.play.php. And here it is. So this page right here, this looks exactly the same as all that HTML that Laravel just spit out at us saying it doesn't contain the text that we want, right? And if we wanted to, we're not going to do this long, but I'm just going to real quick show you what this page looks like. So PHP artisan serve is a command that you can run to boot up the local dev server, and you can just check it out in the browser. So here it is, serving off of localhost at port 8000. So localhost 8000 Laravel. Pretty simple page, out of the box. Laravel works. Cool. All right, let's turn this into the things that we want it to be. So we don't need those links at all. Let's get rid of those links. And this headline, that looks like the perfect thing for this, please give us your information. So I'm going to copy that text. I'm going to paste it right there. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to run the tests, kill the dev server. Run the tests. All right, so now we have this HTML. We got the text that we wanted, but it doesn't contain first name. So if we go back to our test and look, we want all of this other stuff in there too. Luckily for you all, I have already written this HTML, and I am just going to copy and paste it. You don't need to watch me type HTML. That is not why we're here. And the indentation drives me a little crazy, so I'm going to edge that over. And now, if we run the tests, we're green. This is the pattern. That's TDD, all in a nutshell. So, cool. We wrote a test, it failed, we make the test pass, we move on to the next thing. So now that we have the form, let's think about what we want to do with the form. What's it supposed to do? Okay, a lead is going to get captured, so we need to send an email to the support staff, and we have this stuff is required validation. So I'm going to skip any client-side validation just because we're talking about Laravel here. We could definitely put some required fields in our HTML, and that would be cool. But it's not necessarily going to keep us from getting bad data if somebody was able to hack the HTML and post to our server. So instead, let's write a test that says if the validation fails, we want to see those validation messages, right? And this is where Laravel really starts to get handy, because we can do a lot of pretty cool stuff from the feature folder just by itself. All right, so let's make it a test. And let's say when a submission is invalid, VALID, the correct error messages are shown. I'm making these names up as I go. I don't know. Like, it doesn't really matter. It just needs to be descriptive. So, cool. Did that again. All right. When a submission is invalid, the correct error message is shown. So just like how before we were able to do a GET request, we can do a POST request pretty much the exact same way. Our implementation people, the sales team, they don't care how it works. They just said make it work, right? So let's just think for a minute how we want this to work. In my mind, if we have Laravel doing our validation, we can just do a straight up old school HTTP POST request. We don't need to do anything fancy with Ajax. We don't need to use any front end framework. We can. Maybe that would be a nice refactor. But if we have the tests in place, then we know that it works. And then we can refactor to that fancy thing later when the design people come back to us and say, hey, make it more cool. And we say, should have given us that thing to start with. So let's do a POST request. And let's just pick an endpoint. Like, where do we want to post to? I'm just calling this process. So when we post a process, what data are we posting? Well, we want it to be invalid, so why don't we just post nothing? You can pass an array right here as the second parameter, and that's just the key value pairs. So like your form fields, right? Your first name form field has a name and a value, and that's exactly what gets posted over. So you can do the exact same thing right here, where you just post with an empty thing, and now we're posting 0 data. So what do we want to assert when we get that? Well, we want to make sure that we see the correct error responses. And lucky you all, I already have this test written as well. Yeah, these are the ones I want. Copy, paste. And all right, so let's run this test and see what happens. I'm going to run just this test now, and if I copy that, we can run vendor bin PHP unit filter, and then you can paste in just that name, and it only runs that one test. Again, I have little aliases, PTF, PHP test filter. It's my own thing. Anyway, cool. So that's the exact same thing. If you see me type that, that's what I'm doing. And you'll see that the HTML returned by Laravel looks a certain way again, but it doesn't look like the same thing that we were looking at before. And instead, it shows us this like 404 text inside of a class code block, not found inside of a message block, and that doesn't contain this thing. So this is where Laravel is starting to actually be kind of cool, because it's acting like these tests are real browser sessions. These are like people that are coming to your site and doing something and interacting with your system. So what it's doing is it's trying to find this post process endpoint, and it's trying to say like, oh crap, I didn't find that. What should we show them? We should show them a nice pretty error 404 page, right? Well, maybe we don't want that while we're in the middle of our testing. We want to see what the problem was so we can drive towards a good solution. So you can turn all of that stuff off by just saying this, what's that? Without exception handling. You just turn off exception handling, and like magic, when we run the test, we get an actual error stat trace. So here, the error is that the Symfony component HTTP kernel exception, not bound HTTP exception. It can't find this process URL. Well, we know how to fix that. Let's just go make a new route inside of our web.php file. Routes web, cool. Okay. So now this is where TDD, a lot of people would say, write the minimal amount of code possible to make it pass. And I would say, as software engineers, we're all pretty smart people, and I don't feel like it's a bad thing to work towards your goal as long as you're always starting from a green state. Like writing a little route post right here where we say process and then just some little closure that returns the text that we want, that's kind of a dumb step in my mind. It's not really doing anything, right? We know that's not the direction we're headed in. So let's actually go in the direction that we're wanting to do. This is where we could follow the MVC architecture, and let's just put in a new controller right here. So maybe this is like the lead controller. We're generating leads for this sales thing. I don't know, just another name. And we want to go to the process method on this class. So this is the controller, and that's the method. And if we save this, let's see what the new error we have is. And let's scroll up, up, and up. Okay, reflection exception. Class, HTTP controller's lead controller does not exist. So we don't have that class. All right, let's go make that class. PHP, artisan, make, controller, lead, controller. Controller created successfully. Run the test. Scrolling up, what's the problem now? Bad method call exception. Process does not exist on this thing. Cool, let's go find lead controller. Yep. So running that command, put a new little file right here inside of app HTTP controllers, and it extends the base controller that you get out of the box with Laravel, and you get this little 2-line comment. This is Laravel telling you, hey, you probably want to put stuff right here. This little comment thing, you'll see it sprinkled throughout the application everywhere. There's a lot of like bootstrap methods and other spots where they just open and close the function with a little comment, and it's like, have fun. Go make your business logic happen here. So if we get rid of that and we put in a public function process, and we just open and close it, now we run this again. Okay, we have a new failure, and we failed asserting that an empty string contains the text that we want to. So this is kind of a weird one, right? Like, where's this empty string thing coming from? Well, Laravel's no longer hitting any exceptions. It's actually working beautifully. We posted to the thing, we got to the controller, we got to the method, and the method does nothing. So Laravel's like, sweet, empty response. That's it. That's all there is to it. So why don't we actually like make this thing work? So let's take in the request that comes in. I'm going to type into it and just name it request. And then we're going to validate on that request. So this, validate, and we want to validate the request and the rules that we want to validate. So let's just say like first name is required. And we probably want the same thing for last name because we have these all written out for us already. And email address. There are a million built-in validation rules that come with Laravel out of the box. It is very easy to make your own as well. Super, super simple. Go read it up. It's fun reading and fun learning. So let's save this and let's take a new peek. And we got a new error. What's our error now? Okay, a validation exception was thrown. So now here is where we want to stop letting Laravel help us, right? We want to see those error messages on this page. But if we have this line in place, it's going to continue to stop on this like bad data, and it's just gonna like blow up. So let's just get rid of that. And I do this all the time. I add this line, remove this line, add this line, remove this line while I'm doing my testing, just to like see if the application gracefully falls to where I want to. And if it didn't, I'll pop it in there and see what the problem was, and just keep working on my tests until I'm back to a green state. So let's get rid of that thing, save, run the tests, see what we got now. Okay, so we have one failure, failed asserting that this weird HTML redirecting the home page contains that. So this is doing exactly what Laravel does. When a validation exception is hit, it says, uh-oh, let's not let them move forward. Let's redirect them back to the old page that they were on with the error messages so that they can see what the problem is. So if we want to allow this response to follow those redirects, let's just tell it to follow redirects. Cool. All right, so when we follow redirects and we post to process with no data, this is bad, invalid data, we should see these things. And now if we run the tests one more time, we're gonna get one more error. And that's because we're back on this page where we see all of the same stuff that we've seen before, but we don't see our error messages. And that's just because they don't exist in our view yet. let's just put those in. And I have that already written as well. So let me go grab this little block. We'll read through it together. Copy that. Drop it in this guy. Right below the headline, but above the form. I like that spot. Tab. Tab. Cool. So if there are any errors, then we're going to show this div with an alert, and we're going to say for each errors, just spit it out in a list item. Simple enough. Again, we don't have amazing design mockups, so I could say it's good to go. Run the test one more time, and we're green. Oh my gosh, it's beautiful. So what do we run into here? We ran into this weird exception thing, and I don't know about you, but I like to make sure that my expected exceptions are thrown. And this is where we might not need this test that I'm about to drop in, but I like to use my tests, not just as like does the system work, but also as a form of documentation. You'll see that a lot. Like people will be talking about how your tests are your docs. And it's because if you go to a project that has a really good test suite, you can just read it and you can figure out how things work by just going like, okay, here's a part, they did something to it, and this is what they expected to have come out of it. And if that test passed, then that's how it works. So it's really pretty easy to like come into this thing. If I was brand new to this and be like, okay, when a person goes to the homepage, you see the correct text. Well, they're going to the homepage, and okay, that must be the required text. Cool, I just learned that. When a submission is invalid, the correct error messages are shown. Okay, so we've learned that these are the validation error messages. Now, if I wanted to be very explicit and say when the data is valid, I expect to see a validation exception, we can drop in a test that looks like this. And this is PHP Unit's way of saying, let's actually like throw an exception and catch it. So like right here, this expected exception, you can give it the type of exception that you're expecting. So if you have a pretty heavy controller method that might throw a number of different types of problems, you can test for those with PHP Unit as well. And this is just PHP Unit. This isn't even Laravel stuff. This is just awesome. So a validation exception is thrown when incorrect, I should say when incorrect data is posted. Cool. And so we assemble, we assert. We don't really do much. And I'm sorry, we act. And the assertion is this expected exception. So let's go ahead and run just the whole test suite, see what happens. Sweet, so we've already got 3 tests and 10 assertions, and we only open the browser at the very beginning to just peek to see if things were working. We don't need to keep going to the browser, hitting refresh, checking to see if things work. I don't know about you, but 137 milliseconds is a lot faster than I can switch to the browser and hit refresh. No matter, and don't even get me started if I have to like type things out and make it see. Whoa, I got it. That was awesome. Okay, cool. All right, let's go look at my notes because I don't know what I'm about to talk about next.
If you remove that without exception handling there, will that not work?
Let's find out. Yep, it failed to assert that an exception, a validation exception is thrown. So Laravel caught that exception and returned a nice happy 404 page. So we definitely want to leave the without exception handling in this particular test. Let's get back to green. Cool, we're in green. All right, notes. So we talked about a base Laravel install, we looked at some files, we talked about my slides. We're going to PHP Unit, form test, without exception handling. Okay, cool, yeah, so this next step where we wanted to show this thank you so much page, right? So we've talked about all the possible errors, but now what happens when someone actually fills it out correctly, right? Like we need to show that message on the page somewhere. So let's go ahead and write that test, and I'm just gonna copy and paste it again. I don't want to type it. And we're going to grab this one, copy, paste. Okay, when a user submits the form correctly, they are shown the correct message. So we're going to follow redirects again. We're going to post to process, and here, like I said, it's just a key value store. So first name is test, last name is test, email address is test. As long as this data passes the validation, everything's good to go, then we want to see, thank you so much, someone will reach out to you soon. And let's run that test, and it should fail. I forgot to save the file. Refresh, cool. failed asserting that empty string contains an empty so much, someone will reach out to you. So we're back to that stupid empty string thing. Well, if we go back to the controller, it's because all we've done is validate. So if everything's valid, Laravel's like, cool, what do we do? Oh, we do nothing. Okay, we're back to this stupid empty string. So let's actually just send the person back to the home page or the form page with that success message. So return, redirect to home, and you can just say with, and now this is your key value. And what with does is it attaches a single key value store to a single next page inside your session. So it's like a flash message, right? The next page will have this info attached to it, and as soon as they move on from there, it won't have it anymore. So it's a nice little handy way to like show a cool thing on the next page load, or do something. So we could say with success, so the key is success, and the value is this text. And I'm gonna copy that and paste it right there. Semicolon, and now if we run that test, it should still fail because we're not showing that success message anywhere. So same error, but if we go over to my welcome file over here, we have this little block that I've already written. And we're gonna grab that and we're gonna drop that into our view as well. So we got a lot of conditionals in here. This is prime for some refactoring. But the beauty is when you go from green to green refactoring, you know that you didn't break anything. So we can change this code as much as we want because we know that it works. And if we change it a bunch and it still works, then we're good to go. Right? Cool. So yeah, session get success, show that message right there. It's like, cool. All right. Next, what's on our list? Yep, we did that. Okay, so now we get into the meat and potatoes of this stuff, and I want to see where I'm at with my time. Park in case that I'm going to go. Oh, come on. Okay, I'm going a little slow, so I need to speed it up. So next, what we want to do is we want to send an email. And emails, I don't know about you guys, but that sounds really kind of hard to test. Like, how do you make sure that an email showed up in somebody's inbox, right? Let's look at this particular example, right? The ignition turns on the engine. Well, in reality, the engine's connected to like a whole bunch of other parts, right? You don't necessarily want to have to bootstrap all of those parts up to just check to make sure that the ignition starts the engine. Especially if it does stuff that like does real money, right? Like maybe that eats a bunch of gas because it's a really old car, I don't know. And we turn it on, it eats the gas, and we turn it on. Tangent. Anyway, so there's a couple different ways that you could do this kind of stuff. And I'm going to show you a quick conversation that I think is really kind of enlightening and awesome. Copy that. This is from Stack Overflow. We all know and love Stack Overflow. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit so everyone can read it a little bit more. And here is someone trying to do exactly what we're about to do, but it's from like 5 years ago, so it's all outdated. But it's still really smart. This person was taking this mockery library, which I am not here to poo-poo that library. It's awesome. It does really good stuff. I personally hate writing mocks and fakes, right? Like, if we're talking about this engine over here, you kind of have to babysit that fake engine, right? If the real engine changes, your fake engine needs to change with it. So you're now babysitting the real instance of the thing and whatever your test double is. That's what a test double means. It's a mock or it's a fake. It's something that's not the real deal, but it's something that you can use in your testing. So they were saying you can use this mockery thing and set the application to use that mock. So this mock now exists as a mock instance of this other class. And that mock should receive some signals and do some other stuff, right? You can do this with mockery. Read up on mockery, it's cool. It definitely has its place and it's used a lot. But Laravel actually knows that this is a pain. So they're gonna make it easy for us. Again, we don't have to get some third-party library. We can just use the built-in mail system that comes with Laravel. So I'm gonna grab this test. We're just gonna, actually no, I'm gonna stay in this one now because I'm running slow on time. So we're just gonna look over here at the form test. It's the exact same file, right? Like we just, wait, where am I actually? Yeah, feature, cool. This is right. So they're showing the correct message. This is the one that we've seen, and it says, thanks so much, cool. So now when a user fills out the form submission, a notification email is sent. here's where you can use Laravel's built-in fake package that comes out of the box on email stuff. You can generate mailables. These are just little classes that are like, okay, I'm going to be an email, cool. And you can say, hey, Laravel, go into fake mode, make sure that it sent the right one, right? So you can say, cool, go into fake mode, make sure nothing's been sent. We're going to grab this same info. We're going to post that info to this process endpoint. Then we're going to assert that this mailable class, this new lead notification class, was the one that was sent. And we're going to use that info so that we can say, you know, bootstrap yourself, your little email class, and then make sure that the mail has this set to the to address, has the first name equal to the info first name, last name, email, right? So like, we're basically saying, hey, Laravel, go into fake mode, do a thing, and then assert that the email that you're about to send has all the data in it that we want it to. So it's not 100%, right? This is not the crash test dummy going into the wall, but it's definitely like working together. And you know that Laravel is handling this because it's baked into the framework. The other thing that you can do, and this is my preferred way of doing things, is to actually do it. You just spin up something and you interact with it. And I love doing this. This is like hugely taboo in the testing environment. Like you want to be isolated and whatever. And I'm like, no, like we're testing if we can send an email, so let's send an email, right? And there's these awesome tools out there, all these other languages in the world, they make cool stuff. And this thing I'm about to show you comes from the awesome Ruby devs that are out there. They made this thing called Mailcatcher. And Mailcatcher, if I pull up this thing and run this little Ruby gem, Mailcatcher, it will say, cool, I'm starting up an SMTP server at this address, and here's a web address that you can go look at to see. And if I go to that address, localhost, it was 10 something. There we go. Here it is. So now if we send any email to this local address, it'll catch it, and we can review it, and we can see it. So awesome. Let's just use this. This is great. We don't even have to be online, and we can check to make sure that SMTP still works. And now this comes into something I'm going to touch on very briefly because it is a topic and a talk all unto itself. It's probably not better sense. And that's Laravel Dusk. Laravel Dusk is their wrapper around automated browser testing. So it will actually use Chrome in a headless way. You won't see it run, but what it's doing is it's launching Google Chrome. It's going to whatever pages you want to. It's doing stuff that you tell it to, and then it's telling you the results. So if we look at that, I've already installed Laravel Dusk, and that made this browser folder show up inside of my tests folder. And I put another form test class inside of here. So if we take a quick peek at this, this is where we can make some really cool magic happen. While this is running, I don't want this to be running, and when you run it from the command line, Mailcatcher just kind of runs, gives you your terminal back. So you have to hit quit, then you have to hit OK, and that kills Mailcatcher as your local Google server. So what I have here is a very dumb little browser test that has this private function that says turn on Mailcatcher, and it says go run like an OS system call. I don't like these. I try not to put system calls inside of my PHP code. It kind of makes things messy, and you can go a little, down the rabbit hole. But inside my tests, I'm fine with it. It's not a big deal. And I'm just calling the environment variable Mailcatcher path, and I put that inside of my env file. You can see that right here. It's the same thing. So running that system command just runs that command, and it turns on Mailcatcher. Turn off Mailcatcher. Here's how Dusk works, right? So you're going to launch up a browser. You're going to say, go visit that page, find the link that says quit, and then click the JavaScript dialog that popped up. So one way to turn it on, one way to turn it off. Now we can use those anywhere we want to. So if I look at my actual test, can fill out the form when SMTP is working. We're going to go turn on Mailcatcher. We're going to go browse to the home page. We're going to see, give us your information. That's just lingering from another test, whatever. Then we're going to type into the first name field, there it is, last name, Holzapfel, email address, mine, press the sign up button. And then if we go to the Mailcatcher place, we should see a new lead notification in the inbox. Ooh, fancy. We can test it, right? It's pretty cool. And then we just turn off Mailcatcher so that we don't have any lingering processes going on. And you could put these in like startup and tear down PHP unit functions if you wanted to. I did not do that for this specific reason. And it's because when you're in mail fake land, like over here, there's no way to like assert that if the mail didn't work, that you're showing an error message to the user, right? Like in fake mode, it's gonna work because that's not really what you're testing. You're testing that it bootstrapped the mail class correctly and that it's got all the stuff that it needs. But over here in browser testing land, like you can actually make it so that the SMTP doesn't work. I'm gonna do the exact same thing, except I'm not gonna turn on mail catcher and I'm not gonna turn it off. And I'm gonna go to the home page, see that thing, type all that stuff in, and I want to assert seeing that there was an error because it couldn't send an email, right? So this is where you can then like start to actually catch things. This is where like your crash test dummy, right? Here's one that survived, and here's one that didn't. And when it didn't, we wanted to send condolences to but then you can run these, and it's slightly different syntax than just the PHP unit. It's like a PHP artisan dusk. And you'll see when it runs, oh, I got a failure. What did I get? Oh, I think it's because I have, yeah, this thing is still running the PHP server over here. I'm just gonna close this window. And I'm going to turn on the test server over here. Arts, that's my alias for PHP artisan serve. And let's go back over to this one and run the tests again. So what it did is it booted up Chrome, and because I didn't have any server running, it didn't see the expected text. So now it should pass. Oh, yeah, error. Something's already running mail catcher. I left it running without turning it off. So it tried starting it, and then it did just fine. It still passed. And now mail catcher's probably done because that turn off went and clicked the thing and accepted the JavaScript. So if I run that again, you'll see that it actually spins it up correctly, and then it tears it down correctly, and it passes, right? So cool, we have this thing working in isolation well enough where we can still work offline, you can be on an airplane, and you can still test that SMTP works and all that stuff. And this is great. This is all very awesome. And now I want to talk to you about this lovely pyramid that we started with, right? Like, you'll notice I have not written a single unit test this entire talk. And that's not a good thing according to this pyramid. Like, we want more unit tests, right? Like, unit tests are the meat and potatoes of your test suite. Well, you're all using Laravel. And I guarantee you there's a lot of unit tests already in that framework. And I don't want to say don't write unit tests, but I want to say recognize that you have a lot of tech debt right now. You just started using Laravel, you have to stick on the Laravel bandwagon. If Laravel gets updated, you update Laravel. You keep going because this is your technical debt. If you don't keep up with it and you're 3 or 4 years out down the line, you might be stuck, right? This upgrade path might be really hard to go. So you have a responsibility to make sure that all of the unit tests that were written by Laravel and all of that stuff that you got for free to just like start working and being awesome, that you keep up to date with it. So it's not that you don't have any unit tests. It's that you didn't have to write any for your specific instance because so far all you've done is leveraged all of Laravel's awesomeness to make the business logic happen. And this is why I love Laravel. Like, I can still write a lot of business logic and I can do a lot of cool stuff, but you get so much to start with that, you just recognize the trade-off there. We did so much in such a short period of time because there's already so much done. All right, with that little rant done, let me look at my notes. Yeah, mail catcher, Laravel dusk, pyramid, yeah, importance of framework, blah, 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 blah. What's left? Oh yeah, the submissions page. So we don't need to do too much here. I did want to just show off a little bit of how unit testing works. So like right now, on the last example, we left off in the controller where it just basically sent off an email, and that was it. If we look at the lead controller, it's kind of a mess in my opinion. I would definitely refactor this, but here's that validation that we had. Then we just wrapped this inside of a try-catch block that redirected with the error. There was an error processing your request. Please try again later. Here's where it actually sent the email off using the SMTP thing. And here's where it actually saves a submission. So this is our first unit, right? A submission. This is a thing that we have. We can do stuff to it. We can work with it. So this is where we would start to write our unit tests around a submission. And right now, it doesn't really do anything, right? Like it just goes into the database and then hangs out and then we show it somewhere. Well, maybe we wanted to do something cool with it. Everything's stored as like first name, last name, email, and phone, just like the form has it, but maybe the salespeople come back and they're like, hey, can we get a single like full name field on the table? And you go, sure. And you could just like concatenate that in your view, or you could write tests to make sure that you're always returning the full name from the parts that are built into the submission. So if we look at our unit tests, I have this little submission test, and it's like, actually I want to delete that one because we might write that. Cool. So we can get the full name of a submission. So here we just like grab a new submission, right? This is our unit. And we just set a couple of properties on it, and then we can assert equals this new property, right? This new property doesn't necessarily exist out of the box. So we can make it work by like TDD to that direction. You might want to think of like a weird real world scenario we might want to do with one of these things. Something that we could bust out in like 8 minutes of conversation. This full name one's kind of silly. Anyone? Anything? Okay, let's do another weird example thing then, and let's just say like some salesperson wanted to, I don't know, get all of their name, but only the first 4 letters and the first 4 letters. So first and last, they have some weird old school, can only take 8 characters. They want them all in uppercase, right? So some weird real world example. So let's just make a test for this. And let's just say test can get the submission name in the weird 8-character format. I don't know. It's a dumb example. Welcome to my talk. All right, so let's make a new submission. So S is equal to new submission. Cool. And let's just say S's first name is equal to Sam. No, we want longer than 4. Sammy. I like Sammy because I'm being goofy. So let's go with whatever. And last name will equal Jones, right? Okay, so using our brains, we can figure out what we want this to be. So we can say this, assert equals, and that's going to be Sammjone, right? Samjone, I like it. That will be S old system format. I don't know. Just come up with whatever we want to, because that's how TDD works. You don't want to make dumb choices, but you know that if you make choices, you're coding towards a goal instead of just coding in some random direction. So if we save this and we run just this test, PTF, that thing. Cool, failed asserting that null matches Samjone. So let's go to the submission class and make that thing happen. So Laravel, easy to make new attributes on models. We can just go make a public function. Thank you. Get that thing, old system format attribute, and write our business logic. So right here, what do we want to do? We want to return stir to upper substir this first name from the beginning for 4 characters, right? And we're going to do the exact same thing for the last name. So let's do that. Dot last name. So the what?
Function name.
What did I do wrong?
Function name. Public function get old system format attribute.
Ah, nice. Hey, wait, let's pretend that you didn't say that. Let's run the test. And it's like null matches. Oh man, what did I do wrong? I obviously did something wrong. Oh, look, it's a typo. Save. Cool. Run it. And we're green. Ooh, and this is when you all cheer, because everything's awesome. That is so much enthusiasm. I love it. Cool. I don't have that much more time to talk about stuff, but I did want to point out a couple of really cool things. All of these post submissions that are creating these submissions and everything, your Laravel application can talk to your database and stuff, so it's actually interacting with a real database and stuff. And Eloquent, the ORM that Laravel comes with, is fluent in a couple different SQL languages. The coolest thing that I think you can do with this is in your PHP unit config XML file, Like this comes out of the box, all these different things. It like sets the app environment to testing. It sets the mail driver to an array. It sets the queue driver and session driver to all these like built-in just RAM things. And you can also say your DB connection should be of type SQLite, and your database will live in RAM. So instead of actually like writing to a real database server, which is way slower, it can just throw a SQLite database into your RAM and work with that, and then trash it when it's done. So it makes your tests that do interact with the database way faster. And it just depends on what version of SQLite you have, if it can run all the different migrations and everything. A couple other things real fast, the submissions test. So like this one right here, any of these tests that Laravel has, it comes with these like 2 different traits that you don't have to use. With Faker, it makes it so that you can very quickly and easily make fake stuff. You don't have to type out random things. You can just like type Faker first name, Faker last name, whatever, right? So you don't have to think. You just like use a library that has that stuff. And refresh database. This one we're actually using over here. So what refresh database does, when I say use refresh database, every single test that runs will destroy the database, remigrate the database, reseed the database, and now you have like a fresh slate for every single test. So if you have this on one of your test classes, I say break out the stuff that needs the database and the stuff that doesn't. Because if it doesn't need to touch the database, it doesn't need to run slow and do all that migration junk. But that's it. That's pretty much it. Any questions? That was cool, y'all. What's up?
You should, it's worth mentioning that the test response class that you get back from the this get, this post, if you look at the class, there's a lot of helpful assertions.
Oh, totally. Yes.
And they're not in the documentation.
Yes. Okay. Actually, I have one more slide too, because this is really funny. Let's just take a quick look at this tweet. Unit tests pass, no integration tests. Somebody wrote something awesome that totally works, but when they put it together, it maybe didn't work the way they intended it to. Here's another one that's pretty awesome. 2 unit tests, 0 integration tests. Oops. Oh, snap. What about the, that's a bummer. That's really no fun. So yes, to Ryan's point, Laravel, the Laravel docs for testing are awesome, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in here about testing. And we're gonna go to HTTP tests and available assertions. We looked at just like a couple of these: assert status, assert C text. What assert C text does is it takes out all the HTML. So if you have some stupid like one word is in bold, you just want to see the stupid text, right? You can rip all the HTML out, and it just so handy. And there's a lot in here, but do a deep dive. Go look at the actual like testing class, because there's a lot more assertions that he didn't put in his documentation because he wanted to put whatever he wanted to in the doc. It's his framework. There's a lot of cool stuff in here though, and this changes constantly. Laravel 5.3 had way less assertions on like the JSON stuff that Laravel gives you out of the box. And a guy named Adam Lathan released this super awesome training course. Speaking of which, let's go to my final slide. Hey, look at that. I'm telling you to go by and watch that because it's amazing. Enough of that cool stuff happened in there. That course starts at Laravel 5.3, and so you'll kind of watch someone upgrade Laravel throughout the life of the course, because the course took like 6 or 7 months to like do the whole thing. So eventually, Taylor Otwell, the head dev of Laravel, was like, man, that's some really cool stuff that you just put in your course. I'm just going to yoink that idea and put it straight into the framework, and now it's easier for everybody. So there's a lot of cool stuff. Keep up with Laravel because it moves quick and it is totally worth keeping up with. Any other questions? Corbin wanted to clap. I say we do that. Woo! Yeah, I'll put the slides up. Also, all this code that I had in the finished one, there's a couple things that aren't committed, but I'll push this up to GitHub so everyone can just download it and look at it and have fun.
You didn't drop the microphone.
I didn't drop the microphone!